And the point there is there are people who are 60 years old, like, I'm a biohacker, I'm getting younger and I have more energy and I don't have Alzheimer's like all my friends. Like, this is awesome. And there's guys who are 20 going, I can't believe I have this much energy. Like, I'm running circles around my friends. I'm starting my second company. And it's because I manage my energy. Because you have more energy, you have more willpower.
Welcome to the Superhuman Life. I'm your host, Frank Rich, and this is the only podcast in the world dedicated to helping men break free from the shackles of addiction through the power of faith and fitness. It is our goal with every episode to help you take back control and rebuild your body, mind, and spirit. And we do so by bringing you real and raw conversations with people just like you, aiming to find their place in this world while dealing with the everyday struggles and battles that we all face. Now, it is my belief that we were all created for a specific purpose. And if we can harness that belief or faith, then take control of our mind and body or fitness, then we can ultimately create the life that we've always dreamed about, our own superhuman life. I want to let you know how grateful and blessed I am to have you here with me today. Let's get on to today's show.
What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another amazing and very exciting episode of the Superhuman Life. As always, I am your host, Frank Rich. And guys, I got to tell you, I am so fired up for today's conversation, so fired up for today's guest. He's somebody that, I've been following for a handful of years. I'm going to get into introducing here and kind of sharing you some of his background and story here. But I've been familiar with our guests for quite a few years, and a lot of you, I think, are going to know perhaps the name or are going to be familiar with some of his work. But I want to introduce you to the man today. And we're going to take you on a journey of how to use fasting really to unlock unlimited potential inside of you and inside of your life. Really, how can we use fasting to unlock our own God-given superpowers? That's really what we're going to dive here in today's conversations. For you guys that are out there that have been following the work that we're doing at Rebuild Recovery, fasting is something that I talk a lot about and how we can use it in breaking the chains of our addictions and how we can use it in really unlocking our own true greatness. And that's what we're going to dive here in today. So today's guest is none other than New York Times bestselling author and founder and chairman of Bulletproof and Bulletproof Coffee, Dave Asprey. Dave is a 3-time New York Times bestselling science author and host of the Webby award-winning podcast, Bulletproof Radio. He has also been featured on Today Show, CNN, the New York Times, Dr. Oz, and so much more. Now, over the last 2 decades, Dave, aka the father of biohacking, has worked with world-renowned doctors, researchers, scientists, and global mavericks to uncover the latest, most innovative methods and techniques and products for enhancing mental and physical performance. And we dive deeper into this. What is this term biohacking and how can we use this in our own lives? And Dave shares with you some of, his opinion on what are some of the best biohacking or biohacks that we can use. Now, here's an interesting thing. Dave has spent over $2 million on taking control of his own biology. He has used his body, he has used his mind, he has used his own life as a test to test out these theories, to test out these concepts. And then he takes all this and he shares it with all of us and he shares it with the world. Now, Dave has gone on record saying he wants to live to at least 180 years old. And I asked him at the end of the conversation, how did he land on this number? And is he tracking if he's on target? And the answer may shock you. But we get into so much more. Dave is a wealth of knowledge. He's a wealth of information. But he's got such an incredible heart. And that was something that really stood out to me in researching Dave and preparing for the conversation. And then really when I got a chance to talk to him. So we dive into so much. We dive into the 3 F's and then the 4th F that drives all human behavior. You guys are gonna really resonate that. I feel like Dave and I talk very similarly and we see things in such the same perspective. We talk about a lot of the spiritual benefits and the spiritual side of fasting. And I am going to plug his book. I do want you guys to check out Fast This Way. I'm going to link it down there in the show notes below. But for somebody that has been in the health and fitness space for over a decade now, has read the books on nutrition, understands that it's no longer you need to eat every 3 hours and carbohydrates are not, you're not burning fat in a carbohydrate flame. This is one of the best books that I've been exposed to, and one of the best books that really takes a deeper look. It's not just a how-to guide on how to get into ketosis with using fasting and what type of supplements. He covers all of that, but he goes so much deeper in how to use fasting to really unlock your own superpowers. And that's what we're going to dive into. So without further ado, guys, let's get into today's conversation with none other than New York Times bestselling author Dave Asprey. Fast this way to unlock your superpowers.
Mr. Dave Asprey, the bulletproof man himself, Mr. Game Changers, Mr. Headstrong, and Mr. Fast This Way. Oh, and I forgot to mention Mr. Superhuman himself, my brother. Welcome to the Superhuman Life.
Frank, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we had a little bit of technical difficulties, but I think we got it with third try a charm here. So I'm like I told you now, this will be the fourth time how incredibly excited and grateful I am to have you here. You are just a wealth of knowledge, and I'm going to do my best here to extract something out of you that hopefully hasn't been shared anywhere else. That's really my goal with every single one of these, and that's really what I love about you. I mean, in preparation for this, I got to tell you, I probably did 3 times the amount of prep work. You know, like when you're feeling kind of dead space, you throw a podcast on, listen to an audiobook or whatnot, and that's not a knock to any other guests that I've had, because we've had all amazing guests. But when you open up the Dave Asprey kind of pipeline on the internet, it really is an infinite amount of information out there. So I think probably, really the best place to start is our audience here is a health and fitness crowd. They care about taking care of themselves, and it's usually in one of the top 3 priorities. I wouldn't say that we're the elite biohackers. Some of these guys that are at your level and hacking themselves to optimal performance. So I think the best place, as you've been recognized and called the father of biohacking, is why don't we kind of let people know and define what biohacking is, and then how did you discover this?
Sure. Biohacking is a new word in the English language. In 2018, Merriam-Webster's added it to the dictionary along with about 800 other words. My name's actually in the dictionary, which is kind of cool. At least the online version of it. And probably the last thing I ever would have expected as a 300-pound computer hacker when I was young. I wanted to create a field, this is about 10 years ago, that would bring together a lot of people who maybe don't care that much about health. Because we all say, I want to be healthy, but it's number 17 on your honey-do list. You don't wake up in the morning and say, man, today I want to be healthy. The only time you do that is if you're like I was when my mid-20s, where like, okay, my body hurts all the time. I have all the diseases of aging before I'm 30. And I feel like crap, even though I'm succeeding in my career, but like I'm running on empty. Maybe then, God, I just want to be healthy today. I don't want stuff to hurt. I don't want to be tired all the time. So if you're not that person, and frankly, most of us aren't, but we're maybe closer to that than we want to be, health is never a big enough priority. So biohacking, when I created the first definition, started doing conferences, it was the art and science of changing the environment around you and inside of you to give you full control of your own biology. And it's that full control that unites everyone. And maybe your goal is, I want to get swole. Great. That's awesome. Maybe your goal is, I want to be the fastest human on earth. Okay, there's not that many people want to do that. But maybe it's, I want to be able to have enough energy to do whatever I want today and have more left over at the end. And I want enough energy to handle whatever life brings my way, even if it's, a big plate of cookies I don't want to eat, or, whatever other temptations or distractions or challenges, or frankly, opportunities. Just like, I've got this, and the level of peace that comes with that. And that unites everyone at all ages. And it's become a movement. I mean, it's been in GQ and Vogue and, all over the place, where I didn't necessarily know it would go. And the point there is, there are people who are, 60 years old, like, I'm a biohacker, I'm getting younger and I have more energy and I don't have Alzheimer's like all my friends. Like, this is awesome. And there's guys who are 20 going, I can't believe I have this much energy. Like, I'm running circles around my friends. I'm starting my second company. And it's because I manage my energy. Because you have more energy, you have more willpower. You have more willpower, you can apply it towards improving yourself or towards doing stuff in the world that matters, towards building your community, building your relationships, anything. So biohacking isn't about health. It's just about making my body and my mind do what the hell I want instead of what they try to do when I'm not paying attention.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And one of the pieces that really stuck out to me was, you talked about kind of getting back control of your life, or getting back control of your body in your biology. I mean, I shared with you beforehand, the specific work that I do, outside of this podcast is working with men that in some area of their life kind of spiraled out of control. So when I launched this podcast, it was to help men take back control of their life. We use fitness and faith as really, the avenues for that. And I think it's right in line with where you're going, because so many people are just kind of like just mindlessly walking around, like not realizing that, there's all these things that they're either putting in their body, either through their mouth or through their eyeballs or through their ears, that over time they don't even realize the impact on how that is dictating who they are and how much control that has over, the decisions that they're making. Absolutely love that.
It's kind of funny. If you do a line of Coke, you kind of know you did a line of Coke, right? Not that I've ever done that, but of the people I know who are into that, okay, it's a very fast feedback, right? You jump up and down, you breathe hard, But when you do something the night before and the next day, you're diminished because you ate the wrong stuff, you did the wrong stuff, you stayed up too late, whatever. It's much harder to see that. And then the cumulative effect over time, it's tough. But the cool thing is we now have the ability to measure what works. And when I started 20 years ago saying, look, I don't want to be unhappy all the time. I don't want to be in pain. I don't want to be fat. I don't want my brain to be foggy. I made $6 million when I was 26. Lost it when I was 28. Like, I was successful on some metrics and I was a complete shit show on others. Actually, can I say that on your podcast?
Yes, no, that's fine.
Good deal. So it's one of those things where ultimately, if you have enough energy, you can fix all that stuff. But I didn't have enough energy. And you want control of one aspect of your life. You got to figure out what you're doing in other aspects that has a heavy weight, but it's one that doesn't happen right away afterwards. And it's those lag times that mess with us. And biohacking largely is, okay, what are the things that work that give you different results? And what are the things you can do that give you different results across everything you do? Because I'm fundamentally very lazy. If I can get the results with less work, we're wired as animals. And in fact, bacteria are wired to be lazy. Like, why would you use more energy than you have to get the results you want? So for me, biohacking is like, I'm going to find the thing that works best to get me the result and the one that takes the least energy for me to do it. And usually relying on willpower is the hardest thing of all to do, because willpower is measured in electrons that your body makes, and you'll run out of them. And then you're going to do the thing you said you weren't going to do. And later on, I want to share some of the knowledge in Fast This Way, because there's an algorithm for all life that we're following without really recognizing we're following it, that explains everything you do that you wish you didn't do. And it's pretty interesting to understand, oh, if I have more energy, I have more energy to not do the things I don't want to do. And that's where that self-control comes from.
Yeah, we're gonna spend quite a bit of time on that if we can. I wanna spend a few more minutes here on the biohacking. So, you talked about it's the art and science of changing your environment inside of you and outside of you for optimal performance. I think I may have, misquoted that a little bit there, but do you typically start with the changing of the environment internally or externally first? Like, what are some of the first hacks that people can look at implementing?
Well, the one that I thought was worth writing my most recent book about is intermittent fasting.
Okay.
And intermittent fasting is interesting because imagine you were to go to the bank and you don't have an account there, and you walk in the door and they're like, oh, hey, here's some money. And you're like, that's weird. And then they say, we'll pay you interest later today on that money and come back next year and we'll give you more interest. You're like, but don't I have to make a deposit first? Like, no. So intermittent fasting, you spend a certain amount of energy, a certain amount of time, a certain amount of money on breakfast. And that actually makes you hungrier and lower energy all morning than learning how to do a proper intermittent fast. And so you got paid to not have breakfast. You got your energy and your time back. And then you had more energy in the morning. And then over time, your body gets stronger and you don't get insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes and all the crap that comes with that. So you get stronger over time, you get stronger that morning, and you didn't waste time in the morning. So the ROI on intermittent fasting is infinite because you didn't have to do anything. And that's why it's such a big thing. And the reason more energy matters is that having more energy gives you more focus and gives you more power. And that power is what you use for personal development. And I run a sizable neuroscience company. People come and they spend 5 days with electrodes on their head, figuring out why they do what they do. And I've had more than 1,000 entrepreneurs and celebrity types and come through. And what you learn from that is that you can't make much progress on deep personal development inner work if you're tired and hungry all the time. If you're feeling fear and anxiety, it's really hard. The lift is really big. It feels heavy. But if you're supercharged, and I mean electrically charged in your body because you're better at making energy, then what looked like a big mountain is just a hill. And I got this. And the whole thing I just wanted was, I wanted that sense I've got this no matter what all the time. And you can do it, but it really helps to start with fixing your biology, and your biology listens to the people. It's sensitive to your environment. You put yourself in a powerful place, fuel yourself powerfully in a way that lines up with your biology. And all of a sudden, like, yeah, I totally can do that today. And yesterday, I don't think I could have done it. And that's really what that whole feeling of being bulletproof is all about.
Got it. I wasn't thinking that, and this is why I'm so, excited to have you here. Like I wouldn't say it prior to, 2 minutes ago that fasting was a biohack.
It's one of the most powerful ones. And it's just changing what your body thinks the world is like. So people don't really recognize this yet today, most commonly. But if you look back 2 billion years and you remember 7th grade biology, which most of us don't, we say, well, there was these cells floating around and they were us. We don't even know what they were. And then we harnessed these ancient bacteria. They became our power plants, our mitochondria. And now they're a part of us and they make power for us. Maybe that's true, but it goes more like this. There was a cell floating around. These ancient bacteria were like, hey, we can move in and that'll be our mobile petri dish. And we're going to call the shots. And to this very day, ancient bacteria are deciding what you do before you have a chance to think about it. And they can be hacked because they're stupid. They're bacteria. But there's a quadrillion of them. There's more of them than there are cells in your body. And those bacteria, they run an operating system. They run a set of rules that are the same for trees, the same for the stuff that makes yogurt, the same for humans, doesn't matter. And the first thing that they'll do is anything that might be a threat, anything that's scary, you have to run away from, kill, or hide. Now, you're a little bacteria. You're not very good at figuring out what's a threat. So lots of things could be a threat. Even starvation could be a threat. And if that happens, you put all of your focus and energy on that and you drop everything else. So that gets 10 times more energy, more focus is fear, first of the big F words. The second F word that all life pays attention to is food, because famine has killed things for 2 billion years. And so these little bacteria are programmed, whether they're inside you or not, to say, eat everything. And they do. And that's why you eat your 15th slice of pizza and go, I don't know why I did that. Right? And then, okay, so you're creating this little life form. It makes sure it doesn't get eaten. It makes sure it always eats. The other thing that all life has to do to stay around on the planet is also an F word. So we have fear, we have food, and
frequently replicates.
Oh, there you go. I was going to say fertility, but you were thinking of something else here. I know you, Frank. Yeah, that one. So all life does those things in that order. And so if fear is a 10x, food's a 5x, and reproduction is a 3x of your focus. All of these are innate behaviors in everything alive, whether it's plant or animal, in that order always. And the way your body works is you have these quadrillion things we call power plants, but they're actually sensors. They're environmental sensors. They decide before you have a chance, long before you can think whether something feels threatening or not. They decide how much power you get. They make neurotransmitters and they make hormones. And they send a signal to their friends nearby, and they send a signal up into your nervous system, and it goes up into your brain. Your prefrontal cortex has 7 layers of filters. And a while later, you get to see a little bit of what's left. But they already got to tell you that was scary, so you feel fear. And they got to tell you that was food, so you feel hungry even if you don't need to eat it. And they also told you that's the nicest pair of legs I've ever seen. You need to put all of your attention on that. And they do it before you can think. And they know that the species will end if you don't do those 3 things. They're wrong, but they know it to be true, and they make you feel like it's true. And I'm going to ask you this, Frank. Have you ever done something you're ashamed of that wasn't one of those 3 things?
Wasn't fear, food, or fertility, or the act of
fornicating, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. No, I don't think, not that I can think of. No.
No one ever has. Now, you ever lean against a hot stove and then pull your hand away before you really get burned?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay. You didn't pull your hand away, Frank. You didn't go, man, that's pretty hot. I guess I should move my hand. You don't have time to do that. So an automated system did that. Someone moved your hand and it wasn't you. Okay. You took credit for it, but it wasn't you. That's the same part of your brain that makes you eat when you're not hungry, that makes you jack off all the time, that makes you do all the things that we wish we didn't do. They're built in and automated. And when you change the environment around you, they pick up on that. And that's why fasting is a biohack, because you're telling these little dumb cells in your body, hey, you're going to have to be strong enough to go through 12 or 14 or 16 hours without food in your body. Right. And right now they're saying, I'm fat and lazy. I can sit here. I know you're going to be shoveling food in every couple hours. So why should I be strong? And when you do this, it's a major biohack because you change the feeding environment. So they're like, oh man, I guess I should I have all this extra time. I got nothing to digest. Let me take care of the weak cells and get rid of them and put in strong cells. And those strong cells make more electrons, which give you more willpower, which then the next time you feel an urge to eat the extra pizza or whatever else, you know what? I got this. I just don't want to, because your willpower went up because you were better at combining air and food into energy. And that's why fasting is a really powerful biohack. And that's why it gives you more willpower. And intermittent fasting is, we just talk about from food, and there's various hacks in the book, but the definition of fasting itself, it just means to go without. What you're doing is you're teaching your body to feel safe without something it thinks it needs. For instance, with food, you know, if you've read about it, you can go 60 or 90 days without food before you starve to death. Sounds unpleasant. But
I haven't heard 60. I mean, I know that there's quite of research supporting a 40 day. I know there's
you can do 40-day fast. I'm not suggesting that you should fast for that long. I'm just saying that skipping lunch isn't a life-threatening situation. But at 11 o'clock in the morning, you look at your friend and you say, I'm starving. Well, what are we having for lunch? You're not actually starving, but you feel an intense desire for food that has nothing to do with how much energy is in your body. It has nothing to do with whether you're going to starve to death, but it feels like that. And so the body has learned it's not safe if I don't get lunch. Right. And what fasting does is it just teaches that little network of bacteria that's calling the shots to have patience and to wait. And you can teach them, you know what? Not only am I not going to masturbate, I'm actually going to have sex and I'm not going to ejaculate. Right. Because I'm in charge, not them. And you can say, I'm going to go 24 hours without food because I'm in charge, not you. And what they do when you have enough energy to try one of those practices is they reconfigure themselves to become more powerful. And then that in turn makes you more powerful. And what you end up with is, fasting is just teach myself to feel safe going without things that I think I need. And when I say feel safe, safe isn't a thought. Safe is an emergent phenomena from your cells. And if you're bullied, there'll be times as an adult where someone says something a bully would say, and you feel unsafe. And you know damn well that you're bigger than them and you have more money than them and you're powerful, and you still feel bullied and you still snap into a pattern, right? It's all environmental inputs and pattern matching just to try and find a threat because, hey, that bully might be a tiger. And you're dealing with the stupidest life forms on earth that don't have brains and don't have watches and can't see the future and don't know anything about you. And they don't think you're in charge, but you are in charge. So it's just about teaching, like you teach a dog to behave. It's like teaching your body to behave. And the side effect of that from intermittent fasting is a lot more power. And that power goes into you and it goes into making your body healthy, but it goes into energy and it goes into willpower. And that's why I thought this was worth writing a book about. This isn't one of those, hey, step 1, don't eat for a while. Step 2, it's good for you. There's lots of stuff that's good for you that we almost never do. But I wanted to write a book that said, look, you can do this. For me, I had a shaman drop me in a cave for 4 days with no food and no people because I knew I was afraid of being alone and I want to eat if I was lonely. And I knew that I was afraid of being hungry because it would make me act like a jerk. And I was afraid of being hungry because I've been obese. And I know that if I don't eat every 2 hours, I'll go into starvation mode and then I'll get fat, which is the biggest line of crap ever. But I believed all those things. So I'm like, all right, I got nothing. Right? So I can yell and scream and get upset, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm in a cave and I really have no out here. And I face that down and I tell the story in the book because the whole point here is you can fast from anything. You fast from alcohol. You can fast from porn. You can fast from social media. You can fast from negative people. You can fast from carbs. It's called the Keto Diet, right? So fasting is just going without something. It doesn't mean going without all food. And I actually write in the book about, fasting from porn or fasting from sex and fasting for dopamine or anything that's overstimulating. Like, I'm going to go away from that, because when you do decide to do whatever you're going to do, it actually is more pleasurable. You don't eat for 24 hours. That next meal tastes really good. And you get stronger every single time you do it. And that is worth understanding and knowing about. And that's why it's a fundamental biohack.
Yeah, I'm curious to kind of explore this formula and really see the tie between, how can we use, fasting from food, which is one of the three things here that, we need for survival. So, the work that we've been doing here for the last year and a half, really, with, with our company Rebuild Recovery, and this is ultimately the result of, everything that I'm doing. It's because of my own story, just like you, like, I've had to overcome a lot in my own life. And fasting, when I really started fasting in 2019, I was the bodybuilder guy. I came up, in the early 2000s in the fitness industry, your NASMs, your ISSAAs, fat burns in a carbohydrate plane. You got to eat every 2.5 to 3 hours to kind of keep your metabolism firing. This is what we were taught by, the certifications in the schooling. Obviously, I spent a good amount of time as a bodybuilder competitor feeling absolutely miserable and tired all day long. I was 6'4" and I was, squatting 500 plus pounds, but my brain would stop working by 2 p.m. If I didn't give it, 50 grams of brown rice in the next meal. And then, in 2019, when I really started practicing intermittent fasting combined with the carnivore diet, I began to feel, this sense of limitless. Like I had all these physical, achievements, a 600-pound deadlift, bodybuilding competitions, a 500-pound bench press, but the limitless from the brain power. Like I literally said this on the first episode of the podcast. Like somebody asked me, like, what does it feel like, because that episode I recorded an episode coming on the back end of a 72-hour fast, which was my first prolonged fast. And I remember it's like I felt like I took NZ-17 and I could just solve any problem that you put into my brain. I didn't know how long it was going to take, but I knew that if I focused on it long enough, I would be able to solve it. So I'm so in tune with everything that you're sharing in the book and how you talk about superpowers and what you're sharing here. Let's, if we can, maybe unpack a little bit more of this willpower piece, because like I said, I utilize this in my coaching of my clients and students. Now, I hadn't read your book prior to this, and you were probably writing the book at the time that I was developing the program. But I tell these guys, we're going to use fasting throughout our 16-week program. We're going to look at a little short-term fast. We're going to go 24, 40 hours early on. And I explain it as you're going to get three things out of it. One of them is when you learn to say no to the little hunger that you're feeling, when you know to say no to the little craving, just realizing that saying no and then, changing your state, changing your environment, 15 minutes that goes away, you can then tap into that willpower later on when the urge to watch porn or masturbate comes in. I hope, you're going to explain this kind of scientifically. I think you have an equation here. This was just what I experienced. I said, hey, I'm going to pass this along to guys. I've also talked about, we do a lot of goal setting and kind of helping these guys develop a vision for their life early on in the program. And at that point, I want them to go, somewhere between 40 to 48 hours. And the benefits that I'm looking for there are getting into ketosis and just a better sense of clarity for how they're going to be able to, their brain function and operate. But I'd love to get your opinion on that as well. And then I also include, kind of some of the spiritual benefits. So, we have a lot of Christian men that are attracted to us, so fasting is a big part of both the Old and New Testament. But I know every spiritual practice out there, every religion has been using fasting. So if you can, I know that was, not a direct question, but kind of talk to, kind of the benefits of saying no to fast, how that is going to help you grow your discipline and willpower and maybe fighting off another addiction, and then the ketosis and the spiritual part as well.
I first put the Bulletproof Diet out there on the internet in 2011, so 10 years ago, with intermittent fasting as a core part of it. And that's part of the reason people lost 1 million+ pounds on the Bulletproof Diet. So I have had the opportunity to look at results for hundreds of thousands of people I've interacted with over the last decade, and to really learn about fasting. And even the modern sort of carnivore stuff, core part of the Bulletproof Diet. Don't eat inflammatory plants. Don't eat omega-6 oils, going back for a decade, and it turns out there are some plants that are generally safe for most people. So the Bulletproof Diet is all grass-fed. You eat 4-legged animals. Yeah, you have some fish. Don't eat chicken because it's not very good for you. Very carnivore-ish. And my prediction is that most carnivore people will be carnivore for a little while. And then they'll say, I eat a few plants, the ones that don't mess with me.
Yep.
And that's pretty much the recommendations with Bulletproof. Be in keto some of the time. You don't have to be in keto all the time. The reason that it matters is that ketosis is a state where you have more electrons in your brain. If you burn glucose, you make less energy than if you burn ketones. Your neurons love ketones. And that's why you had that NZ17 experience. This is why in spiritual fasting, which is what I write about in the latter half of the book, how do you do a spiritual fast versus a working fast? They're very different things. Well, a sage would go into a cave and he'd sit there for a couple of days. And after a couple of days, you're in ketosis because you didn't eat anything. And you can actually accelerate ketosis the first time you intermittent fast. And there's this weird drink that does that I'm kind of well known for. Bulletproof Coffee has 2 different mechanisms to accelerate ketones. So you have the energy of a third day of a fast, the morning of your first fast. So you don't have to feel the pain of a fast when doing a working fast. But that energy is really interesting when you do a longer fast. It's because some of the energy that's running in your body gets used to digest food. So it's not in your brain if it's in your stomach. And when I say energy, I mean actual energy, electrons. So if your stomach's empty, all the electrons are free for your brain. If you're in ketosis, the substrate for fuel, beta hydroxybutyrate, is better for your neurons than if you would have had some sugar or some carbs or even too much protein. And when you also combine it with a multi-day fast, something else happens. That's why spiritual practices around the world have done fasting for a long time. And I write about some of the ones in the Bible and Fast This Way. And I write about many other traditions that have also stumbled into this same idea. And it's that after a couple of days with this, your body says, I'm not getting any food coming in. I have more power than I did before because I'm burning fat instead of carbs. But I opened up my sensors so I could find food. One of the stories that I tell in Fast This Way is about a friend who was trained in long range patrol, basically like special forces kind of stuff. And part of their training was they drop the guys off with 80-pound backpacks and say, you're going to go through the jungle for 3 days to find this target. And you don't have any food. Here's some water. Good luck. Here's a compass. Bye. And what they did is they hung a hamburger in the tree, actually a cheeseburger, in the tree by the target. And my friend Chris is like, Dave, I'm not even kidding. We're 3-4 miles away. We could smell the hamburger. We knew right where it was. And that's an example of how these sensors are open. So when you want to go into a spiritual state, you want to connect with God, you want to connect with the world around you. When you're running high power in the body and your sensors are fully open, it is a spiritual thing. And you can use it to have a deeper experience of yourself, a deeper experience of whatever God you connect with. And people have profound experiences doing fasting because the sensors are open at a time when there is more power, not less power. Now, that doesn't work very well Monday morning when you have kids running around the house who should be in school and you're trying to focus on Zoom and you have a job and you're trying to start a company, you're trying to do all these things. So there's a kind of a bit of a masochistic practice that was popular, I think, in the 14th century. And it was called a hair shirt. And this is a sect of Catholic monks. They would weave they'd weave shirts out of human hair because it's really itchy. And then they would wear these shirts so they'd be extra uncomfortable because suffering is a virtue. Now, if it's Monday morning, you could say, I'm going to put on a hair shirt. I'm only going to have water. And I'm just going to lean in. And you're going to be like I was. You're going to be like bitchy, right? 11 o'clock is going to, and that isn't a spiritual fast. That's just kind of punching yourself in the face to show how strong you are. And what I'm teaching people to do is, look, you can use coffee, which doubles ketone production. You can use MCT oil during a fast and stay in a fasted state. And this makes the hair shirt fasters, the water only kind of the gung ho kind. It makes them very mad. I'm like, yeah, you didn't have to suffer to get the results, but the results are real. And I've got 10 years of data and all this stuff, all the science behind it. And you can also add prebiotic fiber during a fast. So I would tell someone, look, you're sitting there, you have some weight to lose. you don't really want to intermittent fast because it sounds like a lot of work and you already have enough work. So if you did a bulletproof coffee, which is the MCT oil, butter, clean coffee, and you put a scoop of this fiber your body can't digest that feeds the good bacteria in your gut, you will not care about the bagels or donuts at 10 in the morning. You just don't even want them. And lunchtime comes around, instead of going, I'm starving, you're like, I guess I could eat, but I don't really need to eat. It's weird. Why is my brain working? Like, why can't I solve all these problems? This is amazing. And pretty soon, like, okay, I guess I'll have lunch and I'll have dinner. I just did an intermittent fast, but I never even thought about food. And I just had more energy all day long. And it was amazing. You do that for a little while and suddenly your cells become stronger. And then you go, you know what? Tomorrow morning, I'm just going to have coffee. I don't have time to put stuff in it. It's fine. And then you go, you know, I'm ready. And then your first 24-hour fast, instead of being this huge, ice cliff you're going to climb, I'm going to do it. I can barely make it. I'm going to crawl. Yeah, I went from dinner to dinner. It wasn't that big of a deal. And this is what I want people to learn is, how do you achieve a fast without a lot of suffering? You do that a few times and then you can do deeper and longer and better fasts, but it isn't a burden. It's actually freeing. And that is a massive thing, because if you lower the amount of overhead that your body spends on fear and food, you have so much capacity that you waste. And I found a study in Fast This Way. 15% of the average person's thoughts are about food every single day. If you got 15% of your thoughts back today, what would you do with them? You can do a lot with it.
You feel like you took
It's
the
mind-blowing,
NC-17.
right?
That's NC-17 right there. I just got 15%.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then let's dial down our fear a little bit. And this is a lot of what I've done with my 40 years of Zen, the neuroscience program, some of the meditation stuff that I do. Fear isn't something you choose to do. Fear doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Your fear was all programmed when you were a little kid and you could even think about stuff, right? Someone jumped out and said, boo, it was scary. It doesn't make any sense, except if you weren't in there, there has to be something to keep you alive. It's the same stuff that makes a deer freeze when their stick breaks and run away. We have that in us, and it sucks huge amounts of our energy. But when you turn up the freedom from hunger, you now have the power to work on freedom from fear. Oh, and what's the other thing that consumes a lot of people's thoughts? Is that person thinking bad thoughts about me? Is that scary? Do I have enough? Blah, blah, blah. Just the constant little negative thoughts in your head. And then you got another voice in your head going, that's pretty hot, right? So those are the big three voices in our head. It's like, I want to F that. I want to eat that, right? And I don't want to do that because it's scary. So if we turn down the useless, non-productive thoughts in all three of those domains, holy crap, you don't even have to have more electrons, but the intermittent fasting gives you more electrons too. So you're like, I have higher octane gas going in and I'm not wasting stuff all the time. And what you find is you can do way more. And I've had guys go bulletproof. So they're doing their intermittent fasting, they're doing their bulletproof coffee, they're eating grass-fed only, they're not eating inflammatory vegetables, they're not eating omega-6, all that kind of stuff. And I've also written about my 1-year experience trying to disprove a Taoist equation. And this is something that would be really interesting for you.
I think I know where you're going with this, but yeah,
if you read Game Changers, I think I put the data in that one. The Taoists say that if you're a guy, you should not ejaculate more than once every so often if you want to maintain your health. And there's an equation. It's your age in years minus 7, and you divide that by 4. And so for me, that number is about 8, I think. So it says, don't ejaculate more than once every 8 days. Like, you can have sex all you want, just don't ejaculate, because it depletes you. So I'm like, these guys sound like a bunch of crackheads. So I'm just going to measure my daily happiness score, right, for a year. And I'm going to say, okay, should I follow that? Should I just have sex, whenever I want to with my wife? Masturbate, yes or no? And I'm going to gather the data. And I'm going to also say, I'm going to test what they say, which is, if you really want to live a long time, don't ejaculate more than once every 30 days. And I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous and stupid, so I have to disprove it. So I ran a 1-year experiment. Thankfully, my wife was cooperative. And what I found was that they were right. You actually have more energy. And there is a profound hangover effect from ejaculating, whether it's from masturbating or even from sex, where the next day you're just a little bit more cranky. And it's because you get a huge drop in testosterone. So I've had guys, usually younger guys, like, Dave, I tried what you said. I went 30 days without masturbating. I went on the diet, doing intermittent fasting, and I started 2 new companies. I got a $30,000 raise. I changed my life. And it's because you turned up your energy and you stopped wasting energy, right? And so what I do now is, I'm like, everything I do, whether it's what I put on my plate, what I put on my calendar, It's like, okay, how much energy do I put into it and how much energy do I get back? And there are things that take energy or that require energy to do that don't give me energy back at all. I might do those if they're really useful, but if they take more energy than I get back, I'm not going to do it. I hire someone who likes to do that stuff. That's why I'm an accountant. I hate accounting. Like, I'm not going to do that. I never will. I pay someone to do my taxes. Why? Because I hate doing my taxes. It takes more energy than I put. Like, the equation's wrong. So I want people to learn this is why you fast, though, because it gives you more of that first energy. And that's the energy used to turn down hunger, to turn down fear, to turn down even just like desires, like relentless thoughts about whatever. All of it comes down to willpower, which comes down to how good you are at turning air and food into electrons. And that's why fasting is such a biohack.
Yeah, this is so good. I mean, this formula here. I mean, that's sex transmutation. I've got to assume you probably read, Napoleon Hill. I mean, he's 100 years ago. I mean, he was talking about this one of the last chapters in his book, and then there's been a lot of other ones. Way of Superior Man. I think Iron John touches on it a little bit, but yeah, we're experiencing all that same stuff with our guys as well. They come here for one problem. They've got this thing that really feels like it's got his hands wrapped around him. And once we kind of get past, the first couple of weeks where they've got that under control. I mean, I had a guy within 8 weeks, he just, because we were able to remove his addiction to pornography, and he was filled with this energy. Promotion at his job, became the VP of sales, $60,000 raise. Boom, done, paid for it.
It's really common.
Next guy, 26 years old. I worked with him over 16 weeks, launched 2 e-commerce business, one Amazon drop shipping, and then he had a Shopify store. Built over 16 weeks. He came to me. He's like, I can't even get out of bed in the morning without jerking off. And it's like, dude, we changed his life. There's so much power to what you're saying here. I love it.
I will tell you though, if you're going to eat pizza, you're going to eat all day long and you want to stop porn, it's a lot bigger lift, right? It's put the energy in first and then do the hard thing. And a lot of us we want to do the hard thing without managing our basic biology. It's just more work that way. And it's okay to say, I'm going to take the easiest path possible to get the results I want.
Yeah, that's why we really use those fasting practices in the first couple of weeks. It's like, okay, we're gonna get our hands wrapped around this, understand the triggers and stuff like that, and then in month 2 and month 3 is when we really start tackling some of these bigger goals that they're setting. Yeah. But we've laid the foundation first with going through a fast in the world.
The thing that's important to understand is that being in a safe environment is actually nourishing for you. And eating the right foods at the right time is nourishing for you. And you have to have nourishing in your life. And frankly, a healthy sexual relationship, it's a sacred spiritual act, right? And it's something that's also nourishing for you. And when you take it out and you're like, oh, I'm doing the corn syrup of sex, right? I'm doing the corn syrup of food, right? And I'm afraid all the time of stupid shit that I know I shouldn't be afraid of, but I still feel afraid. And I don't even know why I feel afraid. So I'm going to make up a story about it that I believe to be true. Unpacking all that, it takes work. And if you just set your biology up to do work better, maybe it's going to be easier. And that's certainly been my path. I mean, I was a 300-pound angry computer hacker, and I'm a little bit different now. And I've lost 100 pounds. I've kept it off. I'm never hungry. And I've helped so many people do that with very similar techniques to this. And if you're saying, okay, I'm going to break a habit, whether it's porn or any other habit you don't like, or I'm going to actually start being a nice person instead of being an angry asshole all the time. That's also an enormous amount of work. Like, you got to go in and do like deep inner work and healing and forgiveness. Every bit of that takes work. And I can tell you, because of the neuroscience work that I do at 40 Years of Zen, when I get someone in a state of ketosis using MCT oil, they can do 2.5 times more really deep personal development work before they hit the wall. But if they're like, oh, I'm going to eat my normal, frosted flakes for breakfast, they do 2 hours of personal work and they're burned out. Like, they got nothing left, right? And the hardest thing to do is like, okay, today, I'm not going to give in to temptation, right? But then you're burned out and you get hypoglycemia and your blood sugar's low. You're probably going to default to behavior because you didn't have the raw electrical power to say no to yourself anymore. And so I want people to never run out of power, and then you have a lot more control.
How often do you fast with the Bulletproof Coffee yourself? I know it's not something you recommend people do every day.
Well, I do an intermittent fast 6 days a week. And frankly, guys in really good shape probably can do a normal like 16-8 or 18-6 intermittent fast every day and be pretty healthy, as long as they're getting enough sleep and they're not overtraining.
And you combine every
But
day with Bulletproof Coffee with that, or is that something you use more sparingly?
I did Bulletproof Coffee every day religiously for about 5 years. And what I find is most people are so depleted of saturated fats in their cell membranes that for the first couple of years, it's like once you have permission to eat grass-fed butter, it's like a holy thing. Like, oh my God, like I needed this. And after about 2 years, which is the half-life of fat in your body. So your body is constantly changing out the fats your cells are made out of. All cells, their membranes are made of tiny droplets of fat.
Mm-hmm.
And so after about 2 years of regular Bulletproof Coffee in the morning, like, you know what? Today I'll have less butter, or I don't need the butter the way I did before, because you finally had enough of the building blocks to make healthy cells in your body. And so for me today, I did black coffee in the morning, mostly just because I was too lazy to put the MCT and butter in it. And I was really busy this morning on podcasts. And then I had a lunch around 2:30, which was grass-fed beef. And I actually had a little bit of white rice that had been cooked and cooled, which is resistant starch, right? And I'll probably have a light dinner at 5:00, maybe 5:30 my time. And that's all I'm going to do between 2:30 and 5:30. So I guess I'm doing a 21-hour fast today. But I didn't think about it. Because really, what it feel like? Here's the thing that makes it so easy. Have dinner a little bit early before it gets dark. So have dinner at 5:30. Just be done eating by 6. You got 4 hours before bedtime if you go to bed at 10. So then you sleep for 8 hours. You just fasted 12 hours. And you wake up and you go, I guess I'll just skip breakfast today. And then you've intermittent fasted. And it's just not that hard, but that you can do that. And then you do that for a few days ago. You know what? It was so easy. Maybe I'll just go till dinner. But most people, especially when they start, if you at least do one of the 3 fasting hacks in the book, either black coffee, Bulletproof Coffee, a little bit of grass-fed butter, a little bit of that C8 MCT oil I've been talking about for a decade, and or the prebiotic fiber, it makes the fast effortless. And you can make it effortful, but I want my effort to go into this interview, not into, I've got this. I'm a little bit hungry, but I've still got this. Screw that noise, man. I don't want to have to deal with that with the energy that I have. I want my energy to go into what I'm doing. So I tend to do, I tend to put MCT oil in all of my food. And I had some at lunch with my beef. And I do it most mornings. I'll do a Bulletproof coffee or a black coffee.
Yeah, I've been regularly intermittent fasting for almost 2 years now. Actually, just over 2 years. January 6th of 2019 was when I first started the carnivore diet, and there's a whole long story. I'm not going to get into that, but I probably hadn't done Bulletproof since before that time. So it's been probably two plus years since I had a Bulletproof, and I had one this morning at 5 a.m. And it's now almost 8:30, and I'm sharp as a nail right now. I mean, I've had one meal at 4 p.m. I had a pound of grass-fed beef. That was my lunch. It may be my only meal for the day. I don't know. But
you also don't care is the thing. Like it's not top of mind for you, right?
Food is never top of mind. I mean, because I've been practicing fasting so long, and I've gone, I've ventured into 5 days. I do a 48-hour fast on a quarterly basis. Typically once a week, I'll go an OMAD day or a 24-hour fast.
It's a good practice.
I mean, it's an incredibly powerful tool in my life. I mean, my goals are no longer to be, the biggest person in the gym. I mean, I'm still larger than most people. I'm still stronger than most people that I know. So it hasn't really hindered my performance too much. Let's if we can, maybe share some of the first couple practices and steps for people that maybe want to explore this, because I've learned something in reading your book and hearing you talk today. I would have always said that like fasting is 0 calories. It's only water or maybe black coffee only. But as you've said here, multiple times, and it's written in your book. So what is kind of like the first couple things that if people want to start fasting, like what's the easiest way for them to get it going?
Well, understand that the hallmarks of fasting biologically are 2 things happening. One is you don't raise your insulin with anything you put in your mouth. So there's people say, I'm going on a fruit juice fast. I'm like, you raised insulin. That was on a fast. And the other one is you maintain yourself in a state called autophagy, which is when your body can digest basically cellular debris and old cells and build young cells instead. And when you do that, it means you don't eat protein, because protein raises something called Emdr, and so do carbs. So basically, if you're avoiding protein and carbs, you can stay in a fasted state, which gives you permission to have some butter, to have some MCT oil, to have some black coffee. And some people get real, you can't have black coffee during a fast. It's not water. But all the spiritual fasting people, they didn't do water, they did tea. Like, why did they do that? Well, they did it for a couple of reasons. But the reason that's really important is the colored compounds in coffee and tea, the polyphenols, are probiotics for good bacteria in their gut. And they're actually good for you. They help your body make energy. And it's okay to do a water fast. Like, if that's what you want to do, you can. And eventually you can get to the point where you do it effortlessly. But to say, okay, I'm a guy, I've got 20 plus pounds to lose. I've never fasted before. I eat a lot. I eat a lot of carbs, eat a lot of bad oils. Your body is going to be miserable if you try and do a water only fast. And it's okay. You're like, okay, I'm going to face the misery. But if you're going to do that, lay on the couch, don't work out, have a journal, make it a bit of a spiritual fast. And it's going to be rough. And that's okay. Or you say, I don't want to do that. I have stuff to do. I have a family, right? At that point, try the 3 fasting hacks: black coffee or bulletproof coffee with prebiotics. And there's no one on earth who, if you have a bulletproof, which can only be 100 calories if you want, you don't have to put very much in there. And you add that prebiotic fiber, your body cannot digest that fiber, but it feeds the good gut bacteria. So you have more of the type of bacteria thin people have versus fat people. And you do that while you're fasting, since the body can't absorb it, but your gut bacteria eat it. They make butyric acid, which is ketogenic anyway. So you just got more benefits during the fast, and you just didn't think about it. At that point, like, yeah, I can intermittent fast because it doesn't take any effort. It doesn't take any energy. It gives me more. And then you're off to the races. And 60 days later, you say, you know what? I think I'm going to just go this morning on black coffee. See what happens. And you've got it. And you already did the heavy lifting. It's kind of like taking someone and you take them to the gym for the first time. Like, all right, we're going to, do the WOD. We're going to go lift heavy. The next day they have rhabdo, they're like, oh my God, my muscles hurt. My kidneys are clogged with protein. This sucks. So for the average person who isn't metabolically fit to be able to start doing water fasting, you're just not going to like how you feel. And then you're not going to do it. And things that are hard to do, things that taste bad, like kale. How many people eat kale every day? No one loves kale. It doesn't even taste good. It doesn't make you feel good. It's gross. And it's not good for you, not by a long shot. That's for 10 years I've been saying that. Oxalic acid's bad for you. And so you could say, I'm going to do all this stuff that's unpleasant. But if it's unpleasant, you're not going to keep doing it because you still have those ancient bacteria who know unpleasant things suck. And no matter how good a person you are, no matter how much willpower you have, eventually, if you do something every day that sucks and doesn't give you more energy, you will not keep doing it. And that's why for the average person to get over the hump in order to do intermittent fasting, whichever way they want, the hacks make it easy. They make it accessible. So it's those 3 things, and they're written about in the book. And I'm teaching right now 30,000 people for free how to intermittent fast. So I'm the first time I've ever taught a book in a series of videos. And I'm like, just read the book and I'll teach you for free. So there's a fastthisway.com. You can sign up, and I'm not charging anything for it. I just want people to learn this, because when you learn how to intermittent fast, it's going to unleash the other F word I haven't talked about yet. All life does this other F word, and that F word is friend. And all life does this in order. And this is why bacteria make yogurt and kombucha. And this is why trees make a forest, why deer make a herd, fish make a school. And it's why we take care of our young people and we take care of our elders. And it's why we're wired in our bones to take care of our community. But you're not going to do it if you don't have love in your life, because your bacteria are convinced the species will end if you don't have healthy love in your life. It won't happen if you're feeling hungry all the time because you eat like crap all the time. And it won't happen if you're afraid all the time. So let's address hunger first, because it gives you that 15% of your thoughts back, and you can take care of those other 2, which is going to create huge amounts of power to serve your community better, which you are wired to do and you can't even stop doing. Like, that's what we're supposed to be doing. That's what gets me up every morning. I mean, I could quit working if I wanted to. No, I'm writing books. I'm doing what I do. I'm teaching people the fasting stuff because it matters, right? What else are you going to do with all that extra energy?
Yeah, there's going to be hundreds of guys that are, that are in our programs and are going through our work here. And there's going to be a massive light bulb that's just gone off in every single one of these guys' heads, because, like I told you, we use fasting in month 1. It's like, let's get our hands wrapped around this. Let's understand what this problem is. We're going to work on this, the third F, the fertility. We're obviously facing their fear, because a lot of guys are scared about, can I actually grow out of this? And we use food. And then in month 2, once the foundation has been laid, it's actually what we call our service-oriented month. We do small random acts of kindness. I make these guys just go through a drive-through and pay for the car,
Awesome.
pay for the coffee behind them. We do 2 hours of community service, and questions from guys like, how is me going to serve food to the homeless actually going to help me break out of porn? Because we're shaping and evolving you into be the optimal human that you were designed and created to be. Absolutely love.
If you understand that you will not be satisfied and fully nourished until you address all 4 F's, if you do not do things to help other people, you do not as easily go into a flow state. Your oxytocin is lower. So doing an act of service for another person is an act of nourishing yourself. And we don't see it that way. So charity is a selfish act, because when you help someone, it feels good for you. Right? And it helps the other person. Like, this is the ultimate win-win thing you can do. And charity doesn't mean necessarily giving money to someone. It means doing something kind for another person when you don't have to. You're not looking to get anything back. And when you do it, it's like eating. And if you never do that, a part of you is starving.
That's a quote of the show right there. That might be the quote of the year. Doing an act of service for someone else is doing an act of nourishment for yourself. Woo! That's amazing.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
Wired into your cells. You can't even change that.
So good. So good. I want to take a slight pivot. I think we've really spent a good amount of time here. You dropped a line. You kind of just breezed over it, but the high fructose corn syrup of sex. Actually, I misquoted that quote about two years ago. I gave credit to somebody else. He was the one that gave me the quote, and then I posted, and I went back and saw that it was actually you were the one really responsible. I know you've done a lot of work, with neuroscience, and you have your neurofeedback company, and you do these scans on the brain. Can you speak? I mean, we've had some other neuroscientists on the show here about the impacts of pornography. If this is out of your realm.
Yeah, I can absolutely talk about it. So what I do at my 40 Years Zen company, it's been around for about 5 years, is I've got a couple neuroscientists, and we built new hardware and software for monitoring brainwaves. And people come in and we do a clinical grade scan of their brain and look at what's going on. Where do we have more activity? Where do we have less? And then we spend 3 days going through in a personal development process that's backed by neurofeedback. And we're like, all right, what are the patterns that you have that you don't like in your life, and why? And what you find is that incredibly successful people have all kinds of fears around sex. They have all kinds of fears about stuff that doesn't make any sense, or they have behaviors and they don't know why. There's like these feelings, and it bothers me, right? And I mean, I've had a guy in who lost $500 million in one day and was in the newspapers for that. And, for him, it was like he had family issues. Like, he's like, I was never good enough for my parents. A huge number of entrepreneurs were either bullied or had really critical parents, and they're still trying to prove they're good enough, right? And I was like that as an entrepreneur too. I was bullied, and I think I had pretty good parents, but all parents make mistakes. So you end up with this going, what's the thing that's going to unlock this? And when it comes to something like porn, which is a very common problem people have, it comes down to another F word that isn't wired into your cells, but it's something you can do. And it's something that we actually teach with neuroscience, and it's called forgiveness. So what you do is you recognize, oh, I'm kind of thinking some bad thoughts about myself, right? So you can forgive yourself. You can forgive someone who wronged you. You can forgive a thing, a situation. But forgiveness is a very specific neurological state that's hard to feel. And you can say, sure, I forgive that. And forgiveness doesn't mean you tell someone that you forgive them. It means you stop holding a grudge. And a lot of people are holding a grudge towards themselves about it, or they're holding a grudge sometimes towards women or towards some situation, or your little Susie who was mean to me in ninth grade. You don't know you're doing that. You're not supposed to know you're doing that. But in the right altered states that you can create yourself without drugs or anything, just from meditation and neurofeedback, you realize, oh, okay, I can drop that. And there's very interesting research about forgiveness. What we find is that with forgiveness, different networks in the brain turn on. And what you do is you go back and you drop whatever the original trauma or the original experience was that made porn really attractive to you. And all of a sudden, it's not attractive the way it was before. like it's sort of like cravings go away, and you can drop cravings from food, and you can drop cravings for other things, and you drop automated behaviors. And what I've found there is that when people have repetitive stuff, whether, I'm addicted to social media, I have to look at my phone all the time, right? Or I have to look at porn all the time. The repetitive stuff is coming from something, and you go in, you figure out what it's coming from, and then you go into a very specific reset state that you can do. And the cool thing is with electrodes measuring your brain waves, you can say, yeah, I forgive that situation, that person, whatever it is, I'm going to drop that pattern, but you don't actually do it, because your body thinks that if you look at porn, it makes sure the species will survive. And it's going to, more species survival, right? And it creates the strong urges, and you believe the urges, right? And then you go after it, and then it feels better when you satisfy the urge for a minute, but then the urge comes back and comes back. Well, when you authentically do that process, we call it the reset process, you get into this state where the urge is no longer there, and you're done, right? And quite often people have all this stuff that they think no one else has, but everyone has these things. If you're alive, you have a threat detection system, you have a love detection system, and it gets configured before you're an adult, before you can think about it. And if those things are running and you don't actually have the skills and the tools to go in and edit those things. So, this is an authentic relationship. This is the kind of love that I want in my life. This is the kind of food I want in my life. This is the kind of relationships that I want around fear. Like, I'm not going to be reactive to things that aren't scary. So if someone criticizes me, instead of feeling, little Johnny getting beat up behind the gym, you end up feeling different. It's different than what a lot of people teach, which is you're going to have these feelings. Feel the feelings, let them flow through you, recognize them for what they are, use your willpower, and then act the way you want to act. Dude, that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of energy. Like, the second your blood sugar drops, you're not going to want to do that. You're going to give in. And it's a constant fight. What I want to do is go in, edit the system that makes the urge, so the urge isn't there. So I don't have to catch it and I don't have to manage it. So I spent 4 months of my life with electrodes on my head, developing the hardware, the software, the process, doing the reset process. And the whole point there is, let's stop wasting all this energy on useless thoughts. And then the final 2 days is performance enhancement. But what's the point of performance enhancing something that's wasting most of its energy anyway? So it's like, stop wasting stuff and then turn on the power. And man, it's a pretty interesting thing to do. And at this point, I can tell you, if someone has any addictive behavior, right, it's going to show up in that brain scan on the first day. And you figure out what is the source experience that created that. You go out, you edit the emotional charge that's on that through the reset process, and people walk away without the urges they had before.
Is this something that they're coming and spending, 5 days or a week with you, and it's fully immersed? And I mean, you guys are, there's a therapeutic kind of involvement where, somebody's guiding them along the way, asking the right
5
questions.
days, 10 hours a day. Executive chef, you have to eat the right stuff, otherwise you don't even have enough energy to do the program. It's in a mansion, so there's nothing to think about. You go into these specially designed pods. You're in a very safe space. There's people taking care of you. There's facilitators who talk you through it. It's all handled. So all you do is you sit there for 10 hours a day going, God, how do I do this work? And you talk about it and how do you go in? But when you're done, you've dropped huge numbers of these automatic negative thoughts that you tend to have, right? And there's a lot of shame and self-judgment that is tied to food, it's tied to relationships, and it's tied to sex. And all shame and self-judgment ultimately resolves to fear. And it's fear of not being good enough, fear of being rejected, fear of all kinds of stuff. All fear is irrational because it's not a thought, it's a feeling. Like, fear is just your body trying to stay alive without you in there. And so I was pretty much a jerk, to be perfectly honest, because I was afraid. But I would have said, I'm not afraid. I'm a 6'4" guy. I can handle myself. Like, I've made and lost more money before I'm 30 than most people will ever do in their entire life. Right. And I have this amazing career, and like, I'm miserable. I'm unhappy. Right. But I'm not afraid because there's no reason to be afraid. And what I realized was, actually, there's a lot of fear in there. It's just, it's not labeled as fear. Right. It's labeled as need. Right? Yeah. And you go and you unpack that and you realize this is very programmatic. We're all wired the same way. And you go in and it's fascinating what you can do. What I would recommend people who aren't going to go to 40 years of Zen right now, there's a process you can do called EMDR. And you can do this with a therapist. It's eye movement dissociative response. And if there's, you have an issue with with porn, which is such a common one, or you have an issue with food or an issue with relationships, you find a therapist who does this. It's very common. It's very affordable. And they'll sit you down and they have you move your eyes back and forth in a specific pattern. And then you go in and you basically think about whatever the situation is. And that weird state they put you in with this thing is not hypnosis at all. But it's kind of this mode that lets your brain go, oh, and all of a sudden you see the experience from who you are now versus from whenever you got whatever the programming was. So a lot of times, if you're into certain types of porn, two things happen. One is there can be some stuff that happens as a kid, not necessarily, abuse of any form, but some stuff that labels buttons early on is, that's really attractive to me. And then of course, porn is designed to be addictive because, it triggers dopamine over and over and over. So you get kind of a double whammy there. But if you go back in the original thing that made you really interested in whatever the heck it is you're interested in, like, oh, I just turned off that switch. Like, okay, that really frees you. And of course, you've got all the shame and judgment that's in there, even though like so many guys have it. It's exceptionally common. Then all of a sudden, like, oh, I got this. And when you have no energy going into shame and judgment, then it's a lot easier to say, all right, I'm going to change my behavior patterns around this. I'm not going to go to whatever website I like. And it's just, it loses its power. And that's what it's about for everything that you think owns you, whether it's porn or food or being in a bad relationship. It's all the same hardware, all the same stuff. And EMDR can be really powerful. Neurofeedback for me has been the way. Some people do, plant medicines. I've done all that stuff. I went to Tibet, learned meditation from the masters. And I'm, very happy to do the personal development side of things. I just think personal development is really hard when you're hungry. So let's hit that one first because it's the lowest hanging fruit and it's okay to skip breakfast. You'll actually do better at any one of those practices if you have more energy.
Yeah, that's so true. We had a 25-year neuroscientist professor on, and she's now doing a lot of work in this field as well. She said exactly the same thing. We can do all this, rebooting and resetting and rewiring, but if you don't address, the underlying kind of initial trauma or whatever that initial feeling was that really fed the addiction, if you don't clear that out first, then all of this other work here on this side, it's just not gonna it's not gonna be as successful in fully resetting and rebooting. Where can somebody, is it something we can go look online about 40 Days of Zen? Yeah. Is it public?
It's 40yearsofzen.com, 40yearsofzen.com. And it's it's not a cheap program. It's a very dedicated facility with like custom built equipment to reach states that normally you have to be a monk in a monastery to reach. The intent is that if you meditated for decades, you could get there. I just didn't have decades, so hurry, meditate faster is the guy.
Awesome. Yeah, Dave. No, this has been so incredible. I mean, I could talk to you for hours. We'll have to have you back on here. Can I ask you a couple questions about Dave? Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. You've been pretty open about living to 180. I think you wrote
about at least 180.
At
Don't
least
change me, man.
Oh, so at least. Okay, so this is gonna probably answer my question then. Is how did you land on that number?
Well, I actually think it's a very conservative number. So today, the best we can do is 120. There's people 122 years old right now. Not very many, but let's see. When they were born, we didn't have cars. We fought World War I with cavalry still. Didn't have airplanes. Couldn't spell DNA because I hadn't invented it yet. Didn't know what ATP was. Didn't have antibiotics. Wow. And they made it to 120. So if we can't do 50% better than our current best with all of the technology and all of the knowledge that we have now in the next 100 years, it's because a comet hit the planet. It's inevitable. It's not even that hard when you think about over those timeframes, how much the world has changed. And the world is changing much faster now. The fact that you and I can have this conversation without having to fly somewhere on a transcontinental flight that took 12 hours with prop propellers and the way we would have done this in the 1970s. Holy crap, this is a miracle what's happening right now. The fact that you and I can go to PubMed and we can do more research in 1 minute than a professor could do in a month at a library at Oxford 40 years ago. This is happening. And I have been active in the anti-aging nonprofit field for more than 20 years. I know the guys doing research. If you would have said 20 years ago as a professor at Harvard that, I can reverse biological aging cells, they would have taken your tenure and laughed you out of research. And we've got friends like David Sinclair at Harvard saying exactly that. but he's one of dozens and dozens of guys who spent decades with all of the modern tools going, yeah, we've got this. So yeah, we can turn back aging. We can get younger, and it's only going to get more affordable, more available, and it's going to become commonplace. And it's just the world we live in. And the fact that you're looking backwards and saying, well, it's always been like that. And when who wants to get old? Because old involves diapers and wheelchairs and tubes and not knowing your own name. No, it's an aberration. Throughout all of human history, that's not what age looked like until we started introducing seed oils and crappy stuff into our diet. And it's very recent. It's a tiny phenomena. We're going back to the time when we had our elders, and our elders were sources of wisdom and they were respected and they helped younger people. Why? Because helping younger people makes old people young again. And when young people talk to old people, they don't make the same stupid mistakes that young people always make. And that's how society is supposed to be. So we're doing that with anti-aging. It's inevitable. It's a 180. It's conservative. That's why it's at least 180. It's only 50% better than we can do now. And I got 100 years to do it.
No, I love that. Love that. And I'm 37. I mean, I'm not old, but I'm not a spring chicken. I think that's the terminology for that. But I feel the best I ever have, physically, mentally. I mean, I'm not as strong, but I'm not chasing that anymore. There's no real carryover to what I'm trying to do with my life, to being able to bench press 500 pounds.
And Frank, I got a couple examples for you. Okay, I'm 48. So I've got about 10 years on you. I measure my brain's response time. This is response time, not thinking or memory or anything like that, but just raw response time. It declines with age. I have the average brain response time to auditory and visual stimuli as a 20-year-old. My arterial flexibility, which is a measure of aging, is the same as a 24-year-old.
Wow. So you are actually, that was going to be my follow-up, is you are actually tracking, and there's kind of some quantifiable ways for you to kind of monitor this stuff. That's great. With all this experimentation, I don't know if that's the right word, because I know you don't just do experiments, you do your research and stuff like this. But with anything that you've done or tried, have you ever been worried or concerned, or has there ever been kind of like a oh shit kind of scary moment?
Are you kidding? When I looked at all the science and was like, I think I need to eat a lot more grass-fed butter, and I sure feel better after I was in Tibet. The first time you take a hunk of butter and you put it in a blender full of black coffee, and your entire life you've been told that butter kills you, and you hit blend and then you drink it, it's like walking across the coals with Tony Robbins. Like, it's scary. So I did this for several years. I'm like, man, I'm stronger. I'm more powerful. This is before I published the Bulletproof Diet. I went to Tibet in 2004 and I started blogging in 2010. I had 6 years of playing with Bulletproof Coffee before I went public with it. And yeah, I got a lot of lab tests and I got my calcium score. And I said, well, I'm drinking a little bit more mineral water. I'm worried about getting too much calcium. I don't want to calcify my arteries. This sounds like a bunch of crap. So I got my calcium score is 0.6. It goes up to 100. So it's essentially like 0. Right. And it's probably lower now. Who knows? I haven't done it in a little while. But so, yeah, I absolutely. And a lot of the stuff, like, I don't know what's going to happen. But all of it, I know that what happens if we don't take action is not a good situation. Right. So you have to look at risk and reward. And the risk of the stuff I'm talking about is relatively low. We ate a lot more butter 100 years ago than we do now. Right. We didn't eat any of these crappy seed oils. So to me, eating canola oil is way more of an experiment in your health than eating what I've eaten for thousands of years. I'll go for my grass-fed stuff I've done for a long time because it's the only stuff that works.
Got it. Love it. Love it. Last question, and I'm gonna let you get to your family. I appreciate you, sticking around for a few extra minutes as we're running into technical difficulties here. So fastest way was 7 or 8 for you, correct?
I think it was 7.
Okay. Do we have the next one in works, or is there something brewing in that giant head of yours over there?
Definitely working on the next one. I've got some proposals in mind for publishers. Once I get one accepted, I'll be able to chat about it some more.
Amazing. Well,
I do one every 18 months because, if you spend 20 years and millions of dollars like I have working on stuff, it matters. And if I have it and I don't share it, I feel like I'm kind of being a jerk. And that thing about, helping other people makes you younger and stronger and better. Yeah. This is how I help other people. And I do the work, I do the heavy lifting, I organize as best I can. And when I feel like you're going to get more out of reading the book than you had to put into the time to read it, then I'm going to hit publish. And until then, I don't have to publish a book. In fact, the lowest hourly rate of anything I do is write books. Like, it takes a huge amount of time and energy, but I don't get paid in dollars for my books. I get paid in feeling that I've shared something of value.
Yeah,
and that's why I do it.
Well, we'll be watching from the sidelines here. Love to have you on when that one is ready. You kind of answered. I don't know if you can see here on my notes. I have this giant text here because I wanted to make sure I got this finished part. And you've really kind of answered this part for me, but I want to at least share it with you. as I've gotten a chance to really know you here today and really in preparation, one of the things that really stood out to me about you, Dave, was as this science guy, as this, wealth of information, you get so many people that are experts, and they're just willing, they just want to throw their knowledge down your throat and be like, I'm better than you because I know this and you don't know this, so listen to me. But what I've really extracted from you, and it's really come out in the conversation today, is you have a heart for people, and you truly are doing this to serve people throughout the world. So I just want to acknowledge you, and I truly do admire you for that, because I think,
thank you.
Like you said, you could easily kind of shut everything down and kind of run off into the sunset, but you understand that what we're all doing here together, this world that we're trying to all live and exist in, only functions and works if we're all serving and doing our own part. So I'm incredibly grateful for you, for your work, and just having you here with me today. So I always have one question that I wrap up with, and it's built around, the mission that I have and really the story that led me to launching this podcast. It's called The Superhuman Life. For me, it was a result of my struggles in life and overcoming some of the chains and shackles that had, that was keeping me, addicted to porn and drugs and sex and all these other things. And when I was able to fast my way to breaking those chains, and like I said, step into NZ17 limitless experience, combining all of this together is how I was able to create, the superhuman life that I had. So I guess I want to know, how would Dave, truly define living superhuman life?
Having enough energy to know that you can handle anything that life brings your way is the number one thing that lets you have the opportunity to live a superhuman life. And then you got to figure out what you're going to do with it. What do superhumans do? They're kind of superheroes. They help people. That's the whole superhero thing. So have enough energy to manage all of your shit and help other people manage theirs. And if you do that, not because you're expecting something back, just because the world's better, it's a better place for you to live in. When people around you are in a better place because of something you did, it feels good. It makes you live longer, and it makes the world a place you want to live in for longer. To me, that's what it would mean.
Got it. Absolutely love that. Dave, once again, thank you so much. Get your family, tell your wife and your kids that we are so thankful for having a few extra minutes here with you today. Guys, you heard it here. Fast your way to unlocking your own superhuman life. Check out Dave. We're daveasprey.com. We're going to link his podcast, his books, everything down in the show notes. But for myself, for Dave, guys, we love you, and we'll see you next week.